Hello everyone, my name is Kelly O'Brien. I'm affiliated with the Technological University of the Shannon Midwest in Ireland and the IPCA in Portugal. I'm happy to present on my paper on the investigation of efficiency and accuracy of deep learning models and features with EEG data for binary classification. So just a quick introduction into this. The rapid uptake of machine learning technology in the medical sector has opened many doors in the health sector, and this is for exciting new developments that might hopefully further aid professionals and their patients. Obviously, due to the nature of the sector, it is extremely important that any technology that employs machine learning is really dependable as the human healthcare workers, because it's such an important area. We cannot allow for any errors to take place. Therefore, it's imperative that the research in this area considers all aspects of its implementation, and this includes understanding the data involved, the models that are used, and the features that train them. One such data type that has become quite popular in recent times is EEG data, that is, data retrieved from the electrical signals in the brain. This data is collected in clinical environments usually, with multiple test subjects which will have varying backgrounds, and it will be using a brain-computer interface, or a BCI. There are several of these data sets that are available, and they are online in websites like Kaggle and the mother of all BCI benchmarks, to help future research with data, as it is not easily come by. So the objectives of this research, there were two main objectives. The first one was investigation of the performance of the temporal convolutional network, or TCN, against several popular deep learning models with an EEG dataset in a binary classification problem. And the second one was the investigation of the performance of several types of data features for training these models. And this includes raw data, discrete wavelet transform, and continuous wavelet transform. So just a little bit on the background of this research. Recently, convolutional neural networks, or CNNs, have been applied to EEG data in epilepsy studies, and this gained a classification accuracy of 74 to 79%. This was using continuous wavelet transform features. Traditionally, CNNs had been used to classify image data, but with more research gaining positive results, they have risen in popularity amongst EEG researchers. Before the CNN revolution, there were RNNs, or recurrent neural networks, and they were the go-to neural network for EEG data, as it is well known that RNNs work very well with temporal data. However, they are infamously computationally heavy. Even so, research with EEGs and RNNs continues with a recent investigation into the application of long short-term memory, or LSTM, with brain auditory evoked potentials, and this had an effectiveness and an accuracy of 92.91%. Along with LSTMs, there is another more recently developed RNN called a GRU, or Gated Recurrent Unit. These networks are similar to LSTMs but work better with smaller data sets, and they're not that popular in EEG research. However, they have been combined with other models such as CNNs. One of the more recent models that is showing promising results in various studies is the developed Temporal Convolutional Network, TCN. This network combines RNN and CNN architecture to create a powerful network that can also hold temporal information. As the TCN is such a new development, research with TCNs and EEG data is quite limited to date. There are two studies, though, that did stand out. The first one involves using EEG data to train a TCN and classify patients with epilepsy. This model itself and this study was quite efficient, and it actually had its highest accuracy of classification at 100%. This really demonstrating the effectiveness of TCNs with EEG data. And then the second study explored TCN's effectiveness with EEG data for embedded motor imagery. And this study got a high accuracy of 77.35%. So on to the methodology of the research now for this study. The data set used for this research was called EEG alcohol. This data set contains measurements from two groups of subjects, alcoholics and control. It's a binary classification problem being looked at, so two classes were just required. The subjects were exposed to visual stimuli, pictures of objects, and the EEG data was recorded with 64 electrodes on each subject's scalp. For processing the data was input into the models in three forms: raw data, discrete wavelet transform, and this was the Debauche's wavelet, as the literature showed this to be the most effective, and the continuous wavelet transform, the Morlet wavelet. Again, the literature pointed to this being the most effective with EEG data. Historically, discrete wavelet transform has been used the most and yields good results in similar work, but recently the continuous wavelet transform has become popular again with asynchronous temporal signals, and EEGs would classify as this. The neural networks to be investigated were the temporal convolutional network, convolutional neural network, and there were two of these, one with 2 layers and another one with 3 layers, the short-term memory LSTM, and a gated recurrent network, the GRU as well. Each model was trained with the 3 versions of the processed data, and confusion matrices were then drawn up with the results. These results were then used to test the models with multiple popular neural network tests. These would be accuracy, error rate, sensitivity and specificity, and positive negative likelihood. So these are the confusion matrices for the models that were trained with the raw data. The next slide then are the models that were trained with the continuous wavelet transform features. And lastly, we have the matrices of the models when they were trained with the discrete wavelet transform features. The results then gleaned from the testing itself were input into a table like this. I will discuss the keynotes and the key events from these results. So the testing yielded some interesting results. Not surprisingly, the CNN did come out on top when combined with discrete wavelet transform. The 2-layer CNN had the highest overall classification accuracy at 87.29%. And on the right, then we can see the ROC diagram. When raw data was fed in, and it wasn't pre-processed, the 2-layer CNN also performed the best, and the classification accuracy for this was 82.5%, as shown again in the graph beside it. Finally, and probably the biggest take from this study, when trained with the continuous wavelet transform, the TCN came out on top with a classification accuracy of 72.5%. This ended up being quite an interesting result because it opened the door for further research into why the TCN and the continuous wavelet transform combination work so well together. So some of the limitations of this research. It does mean, because of this, that further work is required to ensure a fully comprehensive study of TCNs with EEG data. Only one dataset was tested, the EEG alcohol, for the study. This would require further testing with more data sets in time. Although there are great sample data sets online, there is still a notable lack of data for EEG online and available. To combat this, further augmentation perhaps of data sets to make them larger might be required. So for some of the future work ahead, the biggest takeaway from this research was the TCN showing promising results with the continuous wavelet transform. And this shows that TCNs with EEG data may indeed be an area worth investigating further. This would be in a bid to potentially introduce it into new smart medical technologies in the future. Investigating interpretability of the model would also be a good next step for this research. Understanding how the TCN has used the EEG data, what it's learned from it, and this would also hopefully allow for further improvements of the model in general. Potential investigation of the effects of data augmentation would also be useful, perhaps using generative adversarial networks or GANs to create synthetic data, which could then be combined with the real data to expand the training dataset, hopefully improving the model further. So for conclusion, although there is still much work to be done, the results gleaned from the TCN with the continuous wavelet transform features are promising. TCNs are relatively new and they have limited research with EE data, but the research available is showing some good results. So certainly further developing this would be a very good path to take. Thank you very much for listening to my presentation. If you have any questions at all, please feel free to contact me at kellyobrien@toos.ie.